been a wild few days for the Miami Heat with the start of free agency. We'll tell you who's in and who's out on the Heat roster before getting into the latest details on Damian Lillard. Will Miami land their superstar this summer? We break it all down in today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. I'm Wes Goldberg, here as always with Dave Ramil. However you might be tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Damian Lillard has requested a trade from the Trailblazers. We'll talk about an active weekend for the Miami Heat that saw Gabe, Vincent, and Max Strus leave, and the Heat make some interesting additions. But let's start with Dame's trade request. A quick recap of how we got here. Dame let the Blazers know at the end of the season that he wasn't interested in a youth movement. They went ahead and drafted Scoot Henderson with the number 3 pick. Did not make any trades for veterans. All they did on the first day of free agency was re-sign Jeremy Grant and missed out on all the other big-name free agents. So 24 hours later, after re-signing Grant, Damian Lillard on Saturday asked Portland for a trade. It started getting reported that Miami is his preferred destination, something that I said on this podcast a couple of weeks ago, lines up with everything I've been hearing there. So now we're at the point where Blazers general manager Joe Cronin is out here saying that he's going to do what's best for the team in terms of a trade. Woj on Sunday reported that Cronin will not work to trade Lillard specifically to Miami, and that he's looking for a superstar package. So that's where we're at as of Sunday evening. David, now that we're in the negotiation stage of the trade request, what do you make of Joe Cronin's public posturing?
Oh, I think he's full of shit. I think he is absolutely just trying to do what's necessary to save face. I think he's trying, like he screwed the pooch immensely. I think anybody with a shred of a realistic perspective knows that what he's done, and it's not necessarily his fault. The team has been bad. They traded away whatever players they had to. They made whatever deals were necessary to build a semblance of a rebuilding roster. But that's not what's aligned with Dame Lillard's interests. And given that, he knew he was going to have to trade Dame Lillard. I've been saying this for days, weeks. It was basically coming down to this point, reporting from Sam Amick indicating that Lillard had gone into last week's hyped up meeting with Joe Cronin. And despite Joe Cronin publicly saying, no, we're intent on building a roster with Dame, Dame basically said, no, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be playing with 19-year-olds, which is totally understandable considering where he is at this point in his career. And Cronin basically said, no. Give me a few more days. I'll make it work somehow, miraculously. Guess what, Joe? You didn't get it done. So I understand that he's doing this right now publicly. He's getting Blazer fans really supportive of the fact that this has gone so completely back asswards here. He's really ruined the situation there. And the only thing he can do is to save face, is to at least publicly say, no, we're not going to just trade Dame where he wants to go. We're going to do what's best for the franchise. We're going to get that extra first-round pick.
Isn't that
we're going to get
job?
That extra young player.
His job is to do what's best for the franchise, not to...
You're right. But I do think that there are repercussions of this down the line. I understand maybe it's being somewhat overstated to say that free agents aren't going to choose to come to Portland. I think it leaves a sour taste in players' mouths because it is a close-knit fraternity, a brotherhood, to see their best player treated badly. Like, let's say Dwayne and the big three never happened in 2010. Dwayne stays for a couple more years, flirting with MVP level numbers as LeBron does whatever he does in Chicago. Chris Bosh never comes, etc. Pat Riley never rebuilds the roster he does. In 2014, 2015, Dwayne says to Pat Riley, I can't take it anymore. I've tried. I've been here. I've been a good soldier. I've done everything possible. And he'd already won a championship in 2006. And he asked to trade. And Pat Riley he says, you know what? I want to go back to Chicago. I want to play back in my hometown. It's where I want to be. And Pat says, that's great. Minnesota has an extra first-round pick. Sorry. You don't think they would never have been able to rebuild from that? And I know that Portland's not the same destination franchise as Miami, but I just think you cannot do this. I think
you're overstating it. I think you're overstating
it. I said I was. But okay. I think the degrees of the package, and I know we'll talk about this in the next segment, are not that great in any other team's favor. Do you want to trade him? And that's the thing. It's like, yeah, you're right. Joe Cronin's job is to build the best roster possible for Portland. And I understand that. But at the same time, he's going to send Dame to another team that he doesn't want to play for, and he's going to basically make another trade request down the line.
He's not going to do that. Damian Lillard's not going to end up playing in Utah or somewhere. He's not.
Right.
Damian Lillard is going to get to a place where he wants to go. I still think that he ends up playing for the Miami Heat.
Oh, no doubt.
I truly believe that. But if something happens out of left field, he's going to end up playing somewhere where he's at least comfortable, even if it's not Miami. And no disrespect to the Utah Jazz, I would never disrespect the CEO of the company this company in that way. But he's going to get somewhere where he's at least comfortable. Like you said, we'll talk about the trade packages and the rival.
Are you talking about James?
I'm talking about Damian Lillard. Yeah, not David Locke. I'm talking about Damian Lillard.
No.
He's going to end up being comfortable.
But there's only one place he wants to be. He wants to be in Miami.
He's going to end up playing. I believe he will end up playing for the Miami Heat. But like I said, if something weird happens, it's going to be something. It's not going to be Boston where he doesn't want to be. It's not going to be Utah where he doesn't want to be. It's not going to be Minnesota. It's not going to be one of those teams. It's not going to be it's not going to be Charlotte. You know what I mean? It's going to be a team that can at least compete for a championship and somewhere that he could at least talk himself into. If it's for whatever reason somehow is not the Miami Heat.
But
I'm with you. I'm with you. I think it's
but I'm saying.
But I also don't.
I think it winds up being a multi-team
So you think that all this?
deal.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, no, we'll get into that. But so you think all this, in terms of the public posturing from Cronin, is just much to do about nothing, and that's what I think. And look, you seem a little angry at Cronin just for kind of doing this kind of dog and pony show, and that's all. But that's kind of my read on it. It's just a dog and pony show. He's got to do this. Look, this is the playbook, man. This is what happens. Star request trade. GM comes out. Leaks to media. We're only looking for superstar packages and we're going to field offers from every team in the league. We're going to canvas for the best superstar package. This is the playbook. This is just the steps. And that's my read on it. It's like, okay, we're just going through the steps. We're going through the steps. We already went through the steps going into the trade request, right? We're going to try to do everything around to retool around Damian Lillard. It doesn't happen. That's why
I am angry. I am angry at this dog and pony show.
It is. It's just how it goes. It's how it goes.
Because if he had honored the request when it first came a week ago, instead of saying, no, give us a few more days to do what's not possible, it's just for show, man. Like if you're going to go out there, because it's for show, because I'd rather it be real. I'd just be like, you know what? We're so happy with the years of service here in Portland.
Well, I do wonder
accommodate his request before the start of free agency, because now fans.
I wonder. All right, no, actually make that point. You're about to make a point.
Because now
fans are going to look down on Portland.
No. I think now fans are. Yeah, I think some free agents will. I think eventually, look, if
no free agents were ever going to Portland in the first place. It doesn't matter.
Exactly. And if they have money,
it doesn't matter what Cronin's doing now. It doesn't matter.
If they have money to throw you, but the fans are railing. It's like, oh, Dame made us sign Jeremy Grant for $2 billion or whatever the amount is. That's on Dame. It's like, no, it wasn't.
It wasn't.
No, it wasn't. Lillard didn't.
You want to know why Grant? You want to know why Grant got that salary, that contract that everybody kind of was surprised by the dollar value of that? It's because Jeremy Grant knew that there was a better than 50-50 chance that he was re-signing with a team that wasn't going to have Damian Lillard on it anymore.
Right.
And he used it to his leverage. And the Blazers really like Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant's a good player. He's getting overpaid, but he's a good player. And if Damian Lillard leaves, he'll continue to be a good player for them. I don't have a problem with the Jeremy Grant deal for Portland. But
Blazers fans do.
Okay. Sucks, I guess.
And
whatever. Yeah. Every team's got bad contracts on their books. Sucks. All right.
But so now they're taking it from both sides. That's the whole thing. It's like, oh, well, now we're overpaying Grant and Dame's leaving. And it's like, come on. You weren't going to walk out of this unscathed. Like, you got Scoot Henderson. You got a good draft pick. You've got Shaedon Sharpe. You've got whatever you get in return, whether it's Tyler Herro, future first-round picks.
To your point of they should have done it earlier. If you do it earlier, you can kind of clean slate. You don't re-sign Jeremy Grant. I get it. I do wonder if Joe Cronin thought that there was a chance to maybe go get somebody, a sign and trade for somebody like Draymond Green. And if you think there's a 1% chance to do something like that, then there's no reason to rush. I don't have a problem with anything the Trailblazers. I don't have a problem at all with how they've handled this. I don't know what the other option was. This is the best player in the franchise's history, Damian Lillard. And if you think that there's a smidge of a chance that you could keep him, if you're able to convince Draymond Green or some other player to come to Portland and say, or maybe something shakes loose, like a Paul George out of the Clippers or something like that, or it didn't. Like, obviously it did not happen. But if you think that there's a chance something like that happens, then I get it. Like, I totally get wanting to wait. And I don't. And when I look at the timing of this all, Damian Lillard saw free agency happen within a 24-hour cycle, was like, all the good free agents are off the market. There's nothing you can do. Damian Lillard is really smart. He understands like roster building better than maybe any other star player in the league outside of LeBron, because LeBron basically does it himself. But I do think that he looked around. He was like, all right, no, like, I gave you the last chance. I felt like I owed it to Portland to give you one more chance, and you guys couldn't pull a rabbit out of your hat. And now I'm gonna publicly request this trade. And that's why the reports came out the way that they did. Because you said like he wanted to get traded a week ago and they didn't do it. And but he asked privately. And now he had to do it publicly. He had to do it the way that every other superstar that's asked for a trade had to do it. You do it publicly. You go through Chris Haynes, you go through Woj, you go through Shams, and you ask for it publicly. And now we're here. So look, they're obviously going to be canvassing the league for ways to get the most out of Miami. I still think Damian Lillard ends up in Miami. We're going to look at some 3-team trade scenarios. The latest reporting is that the Trailblazers and the Heat are maybe trying to get a third team involved to take Tyler Herro. We're going to do it. We're going to do that. We're also going to look at some rival trade packages that other teams can offer. Maybe they beat the Heat's best package. Maybe they don't. We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Heat. But first, David, tell listeners about our sponsor.
Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, daily fantasy made easy. It's just so simple. You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projections, you can win up to 25 times your money. There's no competing against anybody else, just you versus the projections available, and they offer projections on any sport imaginable, whereas it's the NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball. Hey, go Marlins. Men's and women's college sports. The WNBA is kicking it. And the Las Vegas Laces are amazing. You totally got to check them out. It's been a fun team to watch this year. So many different things happening around the world of sports. And if you want to make a little side wager on it, then this is the place to do. Make a quick entry over at PrizePicks.com or download the PrizePicks app. 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. You can make safe and fast withdrawals. You can pick 100% instant deposit match for first-time users, but only if you use the promo code Locked On. That's right. Use the promo code Locked On. You get a deposit match of up to $100 at PrizePicks. So download the app today or go to PrizePicks.com and get started on daily fantasy sports.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Every day, we're going to be back tomorrow with the latest on Damian Lillard and look at the best free agents still available on the market. So make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, like us on YouTube, also subscribe on your favorite podcast app. All right, so I wanted to just take a look at some of the other trade packages that are out there before we look at some of the more complicated 3-team scenarios, because I think even those 3-team scenarios could include some of the teams that might want to try to get involved in a Damian Lillard trade. So some of the other names that we've heard reported: the Clippers, the Sixers, the Spurs have been out there. The Nets obviously have been a team that's often rumored in terms of ties to Damian Lillard. But let's start with the Clippers. There's no route there to me. There's no way that they can get a Damian. Like, their best package is Terrence Mann, Bones Highland. They have 1 first-round pick available to trade, some expirings. Like, that's just not going to do it. The Clippers make way more sense for James Harden, right? Like, that they're not a Damian Lillard destination. Can we just move off of them?
Absolutely.
All right. Philadelphia. Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris. Now, that's interesting, I think. They have some first-round picks that they can include, I think. But Tyrese Maxey, to me, is a better prospect, or better trade chip than Tyler Herro is. He's still on the rookie contract. I think he's going to be that dude's on all-star trajectory right now. Tobias Harris is an expiring contract and actually works for what you're trying to build around Scoot Henderson if you want more size. But like Maxey, I think you're running into the same problems with Herro, right? If you're Portland, like, what are you going to do? You're going to build around the Tyrese Maxey, Scoot Henderson backcourt? I don't know. I think Maxey's an awesome young player, but I don't know that. I also think Tyler Herro's an awesome young player. You kind of run into the same thing where maybe you're trying to get a third team involved to take Maxey, you know? So I don't know. I don't love that for Philly. I like, because now I like Damian Lillard and Embiid together, but you're losing a lot of your depth in any kind of trade like that.
I don't think it's enough. I don't think it's enough. I mean, if Dame's ultimate goal, I mean, again, if we're looking at this from Portland's perspective, it's not necessarily a better deal because if you're going to reroute Maxey anyway, you're getting what, a couple of picks and Tobias Harris. No knock on Toby. I mean, but it's not enough to sway Joe Cronin any. And if you're looking at it from Dame's perspective, then that roster is now gutted without Maxey, James Harden requesting a trade.
Exactly.
And so that's not your path to a title either.
If you're able to get some real pieces back in a Harden deal, maybe that looks better, But I don't know what pieces now. I don't want to do the whole what are you getting for James Harden? That's a whole other segment. But like if you send Harden to the Clippers, for instance, for that, all right, let's call it Terrence Mann and Marcus Morris. Like it's like, okay, cool, I guess. But now you're Damian Lillard. I get to go play with Marcus Morris and Terrence Mann. Like that's not putting it over the top for me if I'm Dame. So I think Philly's interesting. We also heard reporting that they're not even willing to put Tyrese Maxey on the table. And by the way, I don't think they should trade Tyrese Maxey.
Joel Embiid's going to be really he doesn't want to play in Philadelphia. I mean,
also maybe he doesn't want to play in Philly.
So, basically it comes down to Brooklyn, right? I mean, Brooklyn is the only other team.
Can I do a couple more and just to breeze through them? Because there's just
okay.
I just think, well, no, I mean, if you're Portland, you're going to ask for some trade offers, and then you can play these offers off of Miami, even if you have no intention of trading Dame to the Spurs, for instance, right? Like, you can at least be like, well, this is what the Spurs are offering. Can you beat it? Like, this is all about leverage. That's all this is about, right? The Spurs, Keldon Johnson expirings and first-round picks. They have a bunch of first-round picks. It's interesting. And I think it was Ramona Shelburne said something about the Spurs maybe getting involved in Damian Lillard. I think it's interesting. If you think Wembanyama is this good right now, it's almost like the NFL quarterback rule where, okay, well, you drafted your first-round quarterback, build a great roster around him while he's still on his rookie deal, and maybe you have a better chance to go win a championship. I just think it's a little bit different in the NBA. It's just so hard for a guy as great as Wemby is, like to ask him to be like a championship-ready player right now, like a championship-ready co-star next to Dame. If Dame was like 29, that would be a little bit more interesting to me if I was San Antonio, because I'm like, all right, I got like 5 or 6 more years of peak Dame. By the end of that, but in give me 3 or 4 years, we think Wemby could be that good. But to ask Wemby to be that right now or even a year from now, it's just a lot to ask. No, so
they don't want to compete for a title right away. They want to bring them along slowly. This isn't them tanking in 1998, 99 so they could get Tim Duncan. Like that roster was ready made, and they just fell into a generational type player in Duncan and slotted alongside David Robinson and everything else they have in that roster. But now
they need to build around. They need other stuff.
Wemby is a start. Yeah,
even if you got Damian, you would have to lose a lot of interesting depth pieces. Like it would just be really hard to rebuild around them. So all right, Spurs moving on. Boston. Can we talk about the Boston offer? I don't think Damian Lillard wants to play in Boston, but this has been out there. Robert Williams, Malcolm Brogdon, Peyton Pritchard, Luke Cornett, and 3 first-round picks. Ooh. And people will think that I've seen it written and said that that's somehow a better package than what Miami can offer. It's not, man. Like that is
Boston,
first of all,
media mafia.
Yeah, they're all like Peyton Pritchard. He's just as good as Tyler Herro. Like I'm like, what? Since when? Right.
You rebuild around a guy like Pritchard. You get a guy like Pritchard on your roster. You're right there. You're right there, Wesley. Come on. What are you doing here?
Rob Williams, they're telling me like an anchor of your defense. I like Robert Williams. He's a good player. He can anchor your defense for 30 games a season. Like that. He's injured all the time. Like I don't know that that's doing it for me if I'm Portland. And yeah, you get 3 first-round picks, but Miami can unlock a 3rd first-round pick. Like I know that their offer right now would be 2 first-round picks, but if they really wanted to get there, they can unlock protections on that 2025 pick they owe to the Thunder and get another first-round pick. So if you wanted to say, well, it's 3 first-round picks versus 2, Miami can get the 3rd. There's ways to do that. It would cost them something, maybe a future second or something like that, but they could get it. The Pelicans, Zion, I don't know. That just seems like too weird for both teams. That just also feels like and if I'm the Pelicans, I'm like, do I really want to do the Zion thing? Or not the Pelicans. If I'm the Trailblazers, do I really want to do the Zion thing? Like, I love Zion Williamson. I'm actually pretty bullish on his future. If I was a team that with like no future, maybe I would bet on Zion, but I've already got Scoot if I'm Portland. I'm banking on the Scoot thing, not the Zion thing. So, and then Toronto, OG Anunoby and 3 firsts. Based on all the report, now that Van Vliet is in Houston, I do wonder if they try to explore breaking it up. But like, what are you gonna break this up? Bring Damian Lillard in to play with Scotty Barnes? Like that doesn't.
Why send Dennis Schroeder? Why sign Dennis Schroeder? Right? I mean, I don't know. It doesn't seem.
Did they sign Dennis Schroeder? I missed that.
Toronto.
I think Schroeder. That's a nice pickup for them. But yeah, I don't.
Fans do not think so.
I like guys like Schroeder. You know that, the irrational confidence guys. I don't see why Toronto would go all in on Lillard right now, especially if they're if they still think they could trade OG for several firsts in the future and sort of retool this thing around Scotty Barnes. Because if you're trading OG, I mean, yeah, I guess it would be like what? Barnes, Siakam, and Jakob Poeltl and Lillard. Like, that's a good team, but I don't know.
Look, all this is a fun exercise, but I think a lot of teams could beat Miami's potential offer. But do you think it's in Portland's best interest to, or will Portland realistically trade Dame to anywhere other than Miami?
I think they're playing these teams off of Miami. Everything that
I've heard, I'm
not interested in making a prediction. I do think that Damian Lillard and his agent Aaron Goodwin have a lot of leverage in this situation. More based on everything that I've heard, maybe more leverage than even the average superstar without like a Bradley Beal style no trade clause would have. They have some control in this. I still think Lillard ends up getting his way to Miami, but I think you hit it on the head earlier. If all it is to get one more extra first round pick out of Miami, you can roll your eyes at it, but that's just Joe Cronin's job. That's like, it's literally his job. If he has to trade a superstar, you just wring everything out of that trade as possible. And if you have to go through some embarrassing public posturing for a few days to get one extra first round pick, then you do it. I don't
even think it's embarrassing. Like, I think Blazers fans are like, oh, like his job is secured now. He's like, oh, he fought the good fight for us. Like, he did everything.
He has to. You can't just roll over if you're the general manager. You can't. You got to do the public posturing thing. You have to. We're just looking at that. We haven't even mentioned what Miami's best offer was. That's not good on our part. But it would be basically Tyler Herro, Duncan Robinson, or Kyle Lowry, and then the first round picks. And then maybe you throw in like a Nikola Jovic. You could still technically trade Jaime Jaquez Jr., even though he signed the contract. It would be 30 days out that you can do the official trade. So they have pieces. We have heard that Caleb Martin could be a sticking point in any potential deal. Maybe that's what all this is about too. I don't know why Portland would want. I love Caleb Martin. I think he's a great value. I just don't know that it makes sense for Portland. I guess, but like if you're Portland, like he's already 27, you're gonna have to pay him in a year. I don't know, like why? Like it's just I would rather
fast-paced team with that kind of level of athleticism out there, and like
if you're trying to win, it makes sense. But I guess maybe they're gonna try to win.
I mean that's he's young enough so he could be like a rebuilding part of the future. Like I mean,
he's 27. He's not that young.
He's youngish. Yeah. I mean, you've got him basically.
He's 19. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's almost it's
that's a different ballpark completely.
Right.
I get
that's what I'm saying.
But yeah, you can't just build a roster of like 19-year-olds.
I think if you're Portland, would you rather have an extra like a third first round pick, Caleb Martin, or like Nikola Jovic? Like of those three, to me,
my opinion,
yeah. Like if you're Portland, like which one of those?
Draft. I hate the draft.
But Portland, like let's say Portland likes the draft. Like what would I think if I'm Portland, I would rather have the first round pick. Like all right, Miami, you got to talk to the Thunder, get that third first round pick. I would go there, Jovic, because I think his skill set is really interesting, and he's right. He's the same age as Scoot, and then Caleb Martin. And Caleb Martin's the best asset out of all of those. But for Portland's purposes, I'd rather have the young player or the draft picks later.
I think Jovic is not seen as an asset league wide. I think he's.
I think it depends on your evaluation on him prior to last.
There is no draft. Right. Because there was so little on him from last year. He's like,
but he's already. I think he's interesting. I mean, he was a first round. He was a first round pick on everybody's board. And I don't think you're looking at him and you're like, yeah, him and Scoot is the future. I just think, yeah, let's just take a flyer on him. Just take a flyer. Like I would rather take a flyer on 19-year-old Nikola Jovic than 27-year-old Caleb Martin, who's like, what are we doing with him right now? If I'm the Trailblazers. So I don't know. Maybe this is what this is all building up to. So we'll see what happens. Of course, we will have updates on the Damian Lillard front as they come in. So make sure you are subscribed to Locked On Heat on YouTube, your favorite podcast app. Let's move on to some of the other business that has actually happened for the Miami Heat. Losing key contributors, bringing in some interesting players, bringing in some familiar faces. We're going to talk about that next year on Locked On Heat. Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Every day, we'll be back tomorrow with the latest on Damian Lillard. We'll look at the best remaining free agents. So make sure that you're subscribed on YouTube, on your favorite podcast app. All right. So a lot to get to here, David. We're going to kind of just go through this quick. Later on in the week, we're going to do a more in-depth breakdown on what are the new faces can do for the Miami Heat. Thomas Bryant, Josh
New-ish,
Richardson.
kind of sort of.
Yeah. But we'll start with the guys that they lost. Gabe Vincent signs 3 years, $33 million with the Los Angeles Lakers. Max Strus goes to the Cleveland Cavaliers for a deal averaging $16 million annually. Awesome paydays for Gabe and Max. Super happy for them. Way to go get your money. My opinion on this was the Heat obviously were waiting for Damian Lillard. They didn't want to overpay what they viewed as an overpay for Gabe. They offered Gabe Vincent something around $8 million a year. He said no thanks. He went and got $11 million a year from the Lakers. They knew basically right away that they were not going to be able to reach even mid-level exception, like full MLE for Max. He gets even more than that from Cleveland. Good by them to execute a sign and trade, get an extra second-round pick back in that exchange. But I'll just, again, super happy for happy for Gabe, happy for Max. I thought Miami did the right thing. I actually think those are really good additions for the teams that they went to also.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I look,
shooting for Cleveland, a point guard for the Lakers. Yeah, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, but then you signed D'Angelo Russell to like twice that much. Hey man, I know
Russell was like $17 million a year
for Russell.
Yeah, it's like on average.
I mean, you're paying a combined it was $40 million a year. I
would be very surprised if D'Lo finished that contract in LA. That was just one of those things. Like, let's maintain the salary cap slot. Yeah,
I don't think Gabe finishes that contract in Los Angeles. I certainly.
I mean, who knows?
Yeah,
I think. In other words, I think they brought in D'Lo to maintain the roster flexibility because if you lose him, you kind of lose that spot.
Look, personally, and again, I think we should take time later on this week to talk about each of these players. Victor Oladipo too. We should mention getting traded to Oklahoma City, and who knows what his future is like. But each of these players contributed
to
Cody Zeller,
along with two future second-round picks to move Oladipo. So the Heat have
Cody Zeller signing in New Orleans as well, and as you and I were talking about before, Omer Yurtseven looks likely to depart as well. And so. All these players had their moments. We talked to all of them. They're great guys, great locker room people, great people, period, I think. And they were all contributors this season in one way or another to the good, positive vibes in that locker room. And I wish them nothing but the best. But this idea,
no, it's Woj, Justin Holiday, the Nuggets.
Yeah, you got me there on the Woj tweet there. But at the same time, there was no opportunity really for Miami to bring back these players. I think Max in particular.
I was a little surprised that they didn't bring back Gabe Vincent, and then
I thought he would be more open to it.
I thought they were going to go up to $10 million a year. They settled in at $8 million.
For 4 years, that's a pretty hefty contract. But I mean, I understand.
I just thought they were going to try to bring one of them back. I would have to guess that they felt like, look, we can't get into the business of overpaying our undrafted guys because we already did it, and it's hamstrung the roster a little bit. Andy Ellsberg and his whole team have obviously put together projections for what they could be if in the scenario that they do land Damian Lillard and what they are going to be on that second apron. That $8 million versus hypothetically $10 million that came into play. They didn't just happen to come on that number. Like they studied it and they decided. That was the most we can offer. And Pat Riley flew out to Santa Barbara to meet with Gabe Vincent and convince him to come back. They wanted him back, but they wanted him back at that number. You can't blame Gabe. Look, nobody expected the Lakers to come out. I think everybody assumed they were just going to re-sign D'Lo. That would be it. They actually end up getting Gabe and then later surprise people again by re-signing D'Lo, to your point. But yes. Very, very happy. Gabe Vincent was one of my favorite guys to talk to in that locker room. I'm really going to miss him. I'm going to look forward to when the Lakers come into town and we get to talk to him again. And I'm going to look forward to when Cleveland comes into town and we get a chance to catch up with Max Strus because those guys were always really great. Max Strus a little bit more dry than Gabe Vincent. Gabe a little bit more forthcoming, but both of them very, very fun to talk to. And obviously starters on an NBA Finals team, hugely impactful, hugely important to the team over the last couple of years. Max Strus with the 3-pointer that should have counted in the Eastern Conference Finals in Game 7 last year. Like, we had moments with these guys. They're always going to be important to the Miami Heat. They were a big part of that fourth iteration, to use Pat Riley's words, right? And this is maybe what that meant when he said we're working on this fifth iteration. He probably had an idea that it was very possible that these guys wouldn't be coming back.
Can I add something before we add to the list of players that Miami did add? There was also the sentiment around the league and around NBA Twitter that Miami lost a great deal by losing these two players, and it's not like a knock on either of those two players, but I think Heat fans knew better because again, these players not only did they struggle with inconsistency at various times throughout their careers, they struggled with inconsistency up until the NBA Finals, and they were players thrust into the situation to play more minutes because of injuries to Tyler Herro and everything else like that. But I don't know that Miami really lost mega impactful players.
Can I put it? I'll put it in a different way. I don't think that this forces them to take a step back.
Right.
In losing Gabe and Max. I think they're good players and they were valuable players. But you're right. They were inconsistent players. All regular season long, both of them struggled with their shot. There was a reason. Max Strus's playoff run was very up and down. And he's developed other parts of his game, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. And Gabe Vincent, same thing. They're going to be helpful on their new teams, but I don't think that this marks a major step back for the Miami Heat either. Let's talk about the new guys. So they do bring back Kevin Love. Should mention that on the $3.7 million deal. You and I, that was what we talked about on this podcast. Or something that we expected. Not surprising at all.
Taking offers from Phoenix, perhaps. At least that was reported.
And you go get the full. He told me point blank, I want to be back here. And that was within 2 weeks of being here. Before going to the NBA Finals. I thought an interesting move bringing Orlando Robinson back on a standard deal. I love that. So now we basically know what the backup center position is going to be. We'll get to Thomas Bryant here in a minute. They add Drew Smith and Jamari Bouye to the two-way contracts. Those are the two guys who I kind of earmarked as getting the two ways next year, part of their developmental pipeline. They were a little bummed to see Drew Smith sign with Brooklyn in the middle of last year because they really like Drew Smith. He obviously finishes the year. His contract expires in Brooklyn. They have a lot of things going on in terms of roster changes, so they don't bring him back. So the Heat get to bring him back. And Jamari Bouye is one of the best players in the G League last year, all G League, first as a rookie. So you bring those guys back. And by the way, you lose Gabe Vincent. Those guys both play guard, right? So those are sort of your next Gabe Vincents in terms of developmental pipeline type deals. So I like them a lot on the two-way. And you bring Jamal Cain back on that third two-way contract this year with the new CBA. Teams get 3 two-way spots as opposed to
what insurance? Is this insurance if you don't land Dame Lillard? You at least have additional point guards on the roster?
No. This is insurance this is just two-way contracts. Like if you don't get Damian Lillard, you have to make some other decisions at point guard. You're not starting Drew Smith or Bouye next year.
No, you got Kyle Lowry though. I mean, that's the whole thing. But
yeah, I would still think they need to address, even if they get Lillard and lose Lowry or whatever, like they're going to have to make some sort of veteran addition in terms of a backup point guard, I would think. But these are good guys. These are like the pipeline guys when you're talking about who's next for Miami's developmental program. But let's talk about Josh Richardson and Thomas Bryant. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Let's talk about Bryant because I think he's a relatively unknown. Big game against the Heat earlier this year. Remember that we covered that from the arena when he was with the Lakers. I'll play Bam in that game, and I remember that was my thought in that recap as we're recording from the arena is like he played bigger and better than Bam in that one particular game, despite the fact that Bam, is as good as he is. And I think maybe it's a little bit of the Wayne Ellington effect where it's like, oh, you show out against us, maybe there's something to it. But I think he's a big body. He's talented on offense. I think he's started to stretch the floor a little bit, and I think he's got potential there. He's been battling a lot of injury over his relatively short career, but he's still young and he's still looking to prove it. I think there's a lot of gaps there defensively. But as far as getting a player, like he might be the most skilled backup center that they've had in quite some time. I can't recall even off the top of my head immediately.
That's interesting.
Right? I mean, I don't know who else it would be. Like
he's inconsistent. I mean, there's a reason why the Lakers traded him to Denver. He did win a championship with the Nuggets, so it's him, Kevin Love, and Kyle Lowry right now in the locker room with rings. Like those are your champions. Nobody else. Udonis Haslem is retired. I like it a lot. He could shoot the 36% career 3-point shooter. I don't think that this is somebody that you're going to play next to Bam, but I think you could explore it in certain matchups. I wouldn't rule Spo from Spo's a mad scientist. He'll do crazy stuff sometimes, but this is a backup center play. This is not a starting front court play. He's big, 6'11". He's a great rebounder. Defensively, he's inconsistent. This is the thing that frustrates every team that's had Thomas Bryant so far. Defensively, can he kick it up a notch in Miami? That's sort of the bet, right? Hey, maybe we can coax them out to this guy to kind of focus and dial the defensive.
Think about the rosters he's been on. I mean, not to cut you off there, but he's been in Washington, He battled through injury there. The Lakers, nobody was going to coach him up there. Denver, Michael Malone, good as he is.
He was with the Lakers after Frank Vogel too, right? If anybody was going to, so Vogel is kind of the guy that would coach you up, especially the center spot. And to your point, the Nuggets, but he gets to Denver midstream. You know what I mean? Like you're not changing your habits in the middle of a season like that.
Exactly.
So
I think a full training camp in Miami was full, and the coaching staff there, I think they have an opportunity.
And at the minimum, it's a steal. Like I actually was a little surprised. I thought he could have gotten a little bit more on the open market. Maybe he could have. Maybe he turned down.
Yeah, he was on my list. He was on my list, and I thought, this is a guy who's probably priced out because if he's just so young and still talented. So
Speaking of guys who took less money to come to Miami, Josh Richardson reportedly got bigger offers elsewhere. Surprisingly, took the veteran minimum to come back to Miami. I love this, David. We're going to do a lot more on Josh Richardson throughout this offseason, but just some quick thoughts on this. Obviously, part of the 4-team trade that got Jimmy Butler to Miami. Josh Richardson goes to Philadelphia in that deal, along with some other things. Bounces around the league: Philly, Boston, Dallas, San Antonio, most recently New Orleans. 37%-ish three-point shooter for his career. A guy who could put the ball on the floor a little bit. 6'6", long wingspan, rangy defender. I love this pickup. To me, this is the kind of thing, and I don't mean to overstate it, but I'm gonna. This is the kind of thing that swings championships. And I think, I'm not saying that Josh Richardson is winning you a championship, but it's that kind of deal. Like when you're getting that kind of value on a veteran minimum, this reminds me of when the Warriors got Otto Porter a couple years ago. Turning down like $5-6 million deals elsewhere because he wanted a chance to compete for a championship in Golden State and just increase his value around the league. And that's exactly what happened. Then he wins a championship in Golden State on a veteran minimum, plays a huge part of their best lineups and in the NBA Finals, ends up starting in the NBA Finals. And he goes and signs a $9 million, $8 million deal, whatever, with Toronto. So I think I'll
go a step further. I think this is like Bruce Brown almost, right? It's the same kind of level of potential impact. And
we see what that can do, right?
Yeah. A guy, a high impact player, he comes in on 1 year prove it deal. It's basically a 1+1 with a player option. And you go in there to a system that you're familiar with. And I love the wrinkle reported by Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald that it was a conversation with Eric was saying, come back to the fold. You're a Heat lifer at heart. Josh, the way he's always talked about this organization, they took a chance on him. He's a guy maybe with a little bit of imposter syndrome, himself. Like for all the talent he had, he never expected to be this good. And Miami took a chance on him. They developed him. All about the apocryphal story at this point of Spo pushing him in that 3-point shooting contest and things of that sort, having to hit a number. What is it? 80? I think it was 80 out of 100, and he couldn't leave the practice floor until he hit that. It was just that kind of build up over time. He's always been appreciative of the opportunity here. And I can't recall exactly who said it. Somebody else reporting that, when he was traded away, that they knew he'd come back at some point. This is his opportunity. Even if it's just for 1 year, it's 1 year with Dame.
It's a player option on the second year, right? It's a 2-year deal with a player option on the second year, minimum, obviously both years.
You play 1 year
with Dame.
I want really high impact player.
Do you think that phone call that Spoelstra had with Josh Richardson? Do you think Dame was a part? Do you think Dame came up?
Oh yeah.
Hey, look, we're probably going to lose a lot of these guys in the backcourt. We've already lost Gabe Vincent and Max Strus. We could even lose Tyler Herro and Duncan Robinson. If you come here on the minimum, you're going to have a chance to play potentially with Damian Lillard, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo and start for us at 2 guard. Because I'm telling you, Damian Lillard and Josh Richardson, that's a backcourt. Like Josh Richardson is sort of ideally what you want next to a guy like Damian Lillard. Longer, defensive-minded, could pick up opposing point guards so Dame doesn't have to. Not to get ahead of ourselves here, but if you do end up pulling this Damian Lillard trade off, that's what I think they envisioned. I think Miami envisioned exactly this.
Yeah, no, I absolutely do. I mean, look, you're going to have to include Tyler, whether it's the Portland or a third team or whatever. That Portland's not going to be here. Caleb, whatever his role might be, who knows? He's probably going to be coming off the bench. But you get Josh or Caleb coming off the bench. Either one of them, again, a secondary, tertiary, fourth option on offense because now you have Dame there. And again, the defensive presence, the helper, he can make plays. He was miscast in his time in Miami. For whatever, if Heat fans don't recall, and maybe it's just new fans, he was forced into a starring role that he was never ready to embrace. And he was waffling between point guard, shooting guard, having to be the primary playmaker and the defender. He was asked to be Jimmy Butler without Jimmy Butler level talent. And that was unfair of Josh. unfair of the Heat to expect that of Josh. But now he comes in there with a much more specific and limited role. He can thrive in that,
3&D.
especially in this system.
KCP.
Yeah.
Just be KCP. Boom.
Yeah.
Done. Like, and you could see guys like that. They win championships and they play for a long time. They make a lot of money. You mentioned the third team. We didn't get to this earlier, and I want to be quick about it. But to me, if I'm the Brooklyn Nets, I'm just going to put this out there. In terms of 3-team scenarios, Tyler Herro going to Brooklyn for a couple of first-round picks that go back to Portland, that to me is a no-brainer if I'm Brooklyn. I've got Mikal Bridges. I've got Cam Johnson, who I just re-signed. I've got Nick Claxton. I need a scoring guard. And Tyler Herro is perfect for that team. I think, and Tyler Herro in Brooklyn would be awesome. Like, if Tyler Herro is involved in this trade and it ultimately does happen, I'm going to miss Tyler Herro. You know, I am a Tyler Herro apologist. I get accused of it all the time, and it's absolutely true.
I get accused of being a Tyler Herro hater, so it's okay. We're balanced.
We even each other out. That's why we're co-hosts. But I think he would be very exciting in Brooklyn. And if I'm the Nets, I kind of like that. I'm not saying Tyler Herro is better than Damian Lillard, but in terms of what I'm building, I just did the aging superstar thing, trading multiple first-round picks. I know they have up to 11 that they can move, but like it's not a lot of their own picks, right? Like they need to kind of. I think they're building something real. I think they after the KD, Kyrie, James Harden thing, it kind of makes sense for them. I don't know what kind of, in other words, what's their appetite to go back into the aging superstar, compressed timeline thing. I don't know that it would be. Go get Tyler Herro, 25 years old, all-star potential, 20-point per game scorer, can take the most shots next to Mikal Bridges, budding superstar Mikal Bridges. Love him. Cam Johnson's solid. $20 million a year is a little heavy, but that's solid. Nick Claxton is one of the best defensive centers in the NBA. Like that's a good young roster. And if all it costs you is a couple of first-round picks from coming over from Phoenix or wherever, I don't know. That to me is a no-brainer for Brooklyn. I'd rather do that than do the Damian Lillard thing.
You can erase the last couple of seasons of like trying to build that super team with Kyrie and KD and James Harden and Simmons and everything else. And that's another part of the trade is that maybe Simmons is sent to Portland. Who knows? I mean, there's a lot to break down there, but I think that would be fun. Like that team as is, with Herro on there would probably be a top, like a lot of league pass watchability.
I would watch them all the time. Yeah.
You know me,
I love watching Tyler. I've always liked watching Bridges, and I love watching Claxton. I think Claxton's awesome.
Iron Eagle, that great floor in Brooklyn. There's a lot there. I mean, that's a fun team to watch. So I mean,
how many bucket hats? I mean, bucket hats in Brooklyn and Tyler Herro. Just perfect.
And, the Miami Heat officially, as we're recording this, signing Josh Richardson. So good for them.
Official deal. Great.
Yep.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Every day, we're going to be back tomorrow with the latest on Damian Lillard. To look at the top remaining free agents available at some point this week when we get some time. We're going to go in depth on what it is that Thomas Bryant, Josh Richardson, all these guys can bring to the Miami Heat and whoever else they sign. You know where to tune in here. Locked On Heat. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. David, thanks for joining me.
You got it, Wes.